Hello and welcome to Get Into Games on Air, a podcast about board games and the people who play them, or in this case, make them. My name's Craig, as always, and joining me, as ever, is Rebecca.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Good, good. Late night recording. This is exciting.
I know.
It's dark
On a
outside.
school night.
I know. How rare. Today, we are very, very excited to have the wonderful Austin Harrison from IV Studios here with us. Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Sorry I'm keeping you up late.
No. We're glad to be up late.
So.
We've because we're heading on holiday tomorrow, so we've just been packing, and it's been good. It's been a good.
Oh man, I wish I was headed out on a holiday. I have a kid's birthday party this weekend, and then we're launching Tend on Tuesday, so I'm not planning on sleeping a whole lot between here and Tuesday. But
no. That's absolutely fine. It must be exciting as well, having a Kickstarter coming very, very soon, Tend, which is exactly what we're going to be getting into a bit later today. But first of all, let's get to know you a little bit better with some quick fire questions right off the bat. No pressure.
No pressure.
Okay.
Okay, so first game you've ever played?
Ooh. First game I ever played, it has to be one of the classics. Probably like Monopoly or Sorry. The first game I remember playing modern is Catan, which has to be a common answer.
Yeah. First game you bought?
Ooh, I bought a it's the zombie game in winter, Dead of Winter. I bought Dead of Winter back when it had first come out, and that was like one of the first ones that I bought.
Oh, nice. That's cool. A theme you would always want to play?
Space. I'm space domination, like, wars between alien species. That's my kind of game. That's my jam.
Nice.
Favorite mechanism in games?
Ooh. That changes based on whatever game we're currently designing, but I would say bag building right now is something I'm really into.
Okay.
So that's what I've been playing a lot of.
Spoilers for the future.
Maybe.
Favorite player count?
4.
Yeah.
Nice choice.
Color you choose to play as?
Blue.
Mm-hmm. Most interesting place you've played a board game?
Ooh. Oh, wow. Me and my wife played one in Paris, but that's not incredibly interesting. It was just very interesting for me to play on a vacation. Where's the most interesting place I played a board game?
I mean, that is quite interesting.
I'd say so.
Not for people that live in France, but for people that live in America, it's interesting, I suppose.
Yeah.
So.
I'd say that's
if you were playing Paris in Paris, that'd be pretty good.
That would have been better. I didn't do that.
So I guess this might be the same answer, but how far have you travelled to play a game?
Ooh. So that was not to play a game. For just playing a game, I did drive up to Chicago to play a game with a friend, and that's like a 7-hour drive. So that was pretty far.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Sounds good.
A game you never want to play again?
Oh man, I always hate answering this question because I love his other games, and like the first time I meet this person, they're just going to hate me. But I really do not like. It's the cheese game. The dice. Cubitos. I really do not like Cubitos.
Yeah. Well, he has the same opinion as us.
Yeah, because we just can't get on with it. It's just like
I really like John DeClaire. His other games are great. I don't think there's one that's fell flat for me except for Cubitos.
Yeah.
But whenever someone's like, "What game do you never play again?" I'm just like, "Oh yeah, Cubitos every time."
Yeah.
I think maybe it's because the cards are quite small, and then you're trying to remember what the dice do, and it just, I don't know.
It feels very punishing. The dice just don't have any sides. There's like, it's always a 1 in 6. Good luck. Nope.
Yep. I rolled a whole lot of blanks.
Yeah.
Your favourite board game memory?
I was at PAX Unplugged, and we were playing Veiled Fate for the first time after the pandemic with real people. And I thought that one of my friends was my partner. And so I went all in on helping them. And then the person to their left was actually my partner. And they're like, no! And we were all screaming. And it was 3 a.m. and the manager came and said we had to go to bed because we were waking up people. But it was a good moment.
Nice.
Even though I was the person making the mistake.
Favorite convention?
So we actually have a local convention called Tennessee Game Days, and it's the only con where I go and I play games the whole time. I don't have to work. I don't have to teach our games. I just get to play, and so it's my favorite by far.
That's cool. The most beautiful game you own?
Ooh. I might answer more than one. There's a couple of games that I think are just really fantastic. Leader always makes really amazing looking things, so they're up there for me. Keymaster is also up there for me. I really like the Harvest kind of West. It feels very Wes Anderson-y for me for some reason. So I like that one a lot. Most beautiful game I own. I think I'll go with those answers. Orange Nebula also makes really great games. So I mentioned liking like spacey vibes. So Unsettled from them is really great. So there's a lot of good looking games.
And last question, most underrated game, in your opinion?
What do I think is amazing that nobody likes? Most of my games are at my office right now. What game do I love that other people don't want to play again? That's really hard. A game that is always with me that many people have not heard of is Splitto. Have you played Splitto?
No.
Splitto, I guess you'd call it underrated because it's just not very well known, but it's just a card game where you're drafting cards, and the cards that you're drafting, you are playing to the left or the right, and there's people on your left and right, and you're making piles between you, and you're working together to get as many points in each pile, and then you multiply the pile on your left by the pile on your right, and that's how many points you get. And so, cool. But you're not just drafting cards, you're drafting like rules, so I might be like, score a point for every 4 you have, and so me and that person are trying to score 4s. So things like that. And it's like an amazing game to pull out at a restaurant while you're waiting for your food type thing. So it's something I always have with me.
That sounds really good. Yeah. Not had that. I have to look that one up. Splitto.
Good one.
Yeah, sounds really good. Cool. Well, thank you very much for answering those questions. I think we all know you a little bit better. But we can always find out more information. Ivy Studios. It's been around since 2012, is it?
Yeah, so we started as a video production company and then became an animation studio and now are a board game studio. And it is a slow transition over the last 12, 13 years. And so we came out with Moonrakers. It was beginning to be designed in like 2018. And then we launched it in 2019, delivered it in 2020. So yeah, it's been board games basically full time for the last 4 or 5 years.
So what made the transition? What made you go from one to...
I'll give you the rose-colored glass story. There's other things that went on in the background. But the animation studio was really successful. It was working with people like Netflix and Amazon and Nike, just really big, worldwide brands. And we'd work incredibly hard on these amazing things that we were making, but it was commercial animation. And so they'd get it, they'd say thanks, they'd run it as an ad for a month, and then it went away. And it was never used again. And it was just like, we worked so hard on that. That was like our baby, and now it is just thrown out into the garbage. And so we actually decided to start making our own products before board games. We made an app called Bouncy Smash, which was just like a game. And that got, 200,000 downloads or something like that. But it didn't make any money, and it wasn't sustainable. And then we were lifelong board game players, had been playing since, early college days. And had fallen in love with board games again in like the 2015, 2016 time. And so we were just playing games all the time. And we were playing Dominion a ton and Cosmic Encounter a ton. And so you might see that influence in Moonrakers if you played Moonrakers. But when we made Moonrakers, we got to pour our love into a physical product that's just stayed around. It's been with us the whole time. And making something that we loved that got to continue on was magical for us. And so the owners started focusing on the board game side, and I started focusing on the board game side. And the pandemic happened, and a lot of things happened, and it ended up being just that the board game studio was the way forward. So, that's how the transition happened.
Yeah.
Ooh. The games are like really well made.
Yeah.
Like the production quality on them is like super high.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
awesome.
Like the first time, like we had Moonrakers and was showing it to friends and stuff like that. I was like, just open the box and there's a comic book here that tells you about the game before the game. This is what just incredible. And then you go through with like metal coins and like component wise, it's like it's so good because you don't have. I mean, I know you do have like metal ships for Moonrakers, and there are upgraded components, but out of the box, it's just perfect components. And I think that's something that really like is a testament to you guys with all of the games that you make, because their production value is and that's one of the things that you strive to have, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think you really hit it on the head, just like talking about like loving the things that we make and wanting them to last. Component quality is really, really important to us. And, you know, putting those metal coins in that game made that game more expensive, and that's not for everyone, and that's fine, but we made the game that we wanted to play. And that's helped us in some ways because we found other people that wanted to play the games that we were making and the quality of games we were making. But it's also hurt us. Like, Moonrakers cannot be sold in Target because of those metal coins, probably, right?
Yeah,
Like, if we made that a smaller box that didn't have as big of storage and doesn't have, you know, all stuff, like, we could probably sell that in Target. And we don't, because we wanted to have this experience and we wanted people to enjoy it the way that we wanted to enjoy it. And so maybe 10 years down the road, we'll make a Target version of Moonrakers. Who knows? Or maybe someone will buy the company and make a Target version of Moonrakers. I have no idea. But yeah, for now, we're going to keep making games that are the quality level that we want to be playing at.
Yeah, so you sell direct to like consumer, don't you? You don't sell to like retail and then retail sell off, that kind of thing.
So I would say the exception is like friendly local game stores. We have a list that we'll reach out to and be like, hey, we have this Kickstarter live. If you want to join this Kickstarter, you can back. They don't back the physical campaign on Kickstarter, because then Kickstarter would just take 10% of our money. They just sign up during this window of the Kickstarter, and they can get the Kickstarter bonuses. That way they can. We're trying to support the friendly local game stores, not the Targets of the world, if that makes sense. And so we'll work with stores that want to work with us. But we don't have like a full-time person that's out there selling to those stores, so we don't get in as many as a lot of other
people. Yeah, that's cool. With the games that you've made so far, obviously you've got lots around the corner. What one are you sort of proudest of? Is it like a Moonrakers being the number one, being your proudest moment, or is there something that you are?
No, Fractured Sky is my proudest moment. Fractured Sky is a special production for us just because it was so ambitious internally. When we were like, okay, we want to make these plastic miniatures, like we've done that before, that's no big thing, but then we want, you know, over how many metal, or there's 75 magnetic components in that game.
Wow.
Which is a lot, especially when you're worried about, you know, polarity of magnets and stuff. Like if one of those chips, the magnets is flipped, the game is not going to work. And so there was a lot of trust between us and our manufacturer, Panda Games, to make that. If whoever's listening knows anything about Panda Games, they make really, really great games, but they are more expensive to work with because they're trustworthy. And that's one of those games that really needed that magic of someone that could be like at all their stations where they're assembling, they had a master magnet that they would test all of the pieces against to make sure the magnets had all been put in correctly, right? And I was really worried about that from a customer service standpoint. Like, how are we going to pull that off? Like, we can't be sending every third person a replacement magnet part because it's flipped. Like, that has to be right, or we're going to bankrupt ourselves. And I think for a while, I was doing all the customer service of the company because I was kind of like this catch-all position that was just doing what needed to be done. And in my time at customer service, I think I saw 2 flip magnets on like 10,000 games or however we made.
Wow,
so
that's good.
It was really incredible that they were able to pull that off. And so not just that, but that whole project was our first time doing painted miniatures. Painted miniatures is very nerve-wracking because we've all seen like eyeballs painted on cheeks and everything else, right? And so this one was ships. So we were like, okay, we don't have to get a face right. Can we try this? And we're just really in love with how that production turned out. I think it's probably our most beautiful and our most functionally complicated game we've ever made. And I also love the gameplay of it. So I think that's my proudest accomplishment. It's definitely not our most well-known game. Moonrakers by far is our most well-known game. But it is the one I'm most proud of.
So how do you come up with these new ideas for games?
Slowly.
They just come to you, or
We have a game design staff of 3. So it's me, who's kind of that catch-all position that I told you about, and then Zach, who is one of the owners of the company, and he's the creative director. He's the reason that the games, or he's one of the main reasons that the games look so good as they do. He was the one, creative directing things for Nike and Amazon and all those places, and he brings that experience and that art direction to our games. But he also is a really good game designer, and so he's one of the game designers, and he's the one that came up with the original idea for Moonrakers. So has that under his belt as well. And then Max on our team, he was a 3D modeler at the animation studio, also loved board games. We'd all play board games together. And so when we started working on Moonrakers, Max is now a full-time game designer. And he's done an incredible job since going full-time game design, has really been knocking it out of the park, and all 3 of us together just work really well together. And to be clear, he was game designing while he was a 3D modeler too. So he's been a part of, all 3 of us have designed every game we have made. Now, occasionally we will also bring in outside designers and design in collaboration with them. So Moonrollers and the expansion for Veiled Fate is a guy named Robert Hibakimian. He also has done some stuff for Bitewing Games, and he's an incredible up-and-coming designer. I think out of all the designers I've met, he has the most shot at being the next Knizia. He's just very prolific. He can design a game in a week and it be amazing. And so I can't do that. I'm not like that. But he's wonderful. If he ever watches this, he'll be like, I do not design games in a week. You just hear about them, and then a week later you play it, and that's why you think I do that. But he's fantastic, and so we've worked with him a couple of times. And then on Tend, we actually have a friend named Toby that's come on board. And how long have we been designing this together? We've been designing it for, I think, over a year together. His name's Toby Sarnell, and he's great. And so he had the idea for Tend and a lot of the mechanisms, and then he brought it to us, and we've been building those mechanisms and adding new mechanisms and balancing it all together over the last year. So that it's sometimes internal, where we'll have an idea internally and test it for a long time, and eventually we get to where we're at. Usually starts with a mechanic before a theme. We're usually not theme first people, we're mechanic first people. Even on games where people are like, you definitely went theme first on that. I would say Veiled Fate is our game where everyone's like, that was definitely the theme. It was not. We were mechanic long before we were theme. In fact, we had a terrible time coming up with a theme that worked for that game. And so, yeah, it's funny how it kind of all works out. But yeah, that was a very long answer. I hope I answered correctly.
Does it usually take, so you said it takes about a year to come up with, get from the starting idea to the almost finished product?
It depends on the game. Tend has definitely been over a year. That's between Toby's time and our time. It's probably more like 3 years. Okay. It could be as long as 4. He started it during the pandemic, and then we've been it for a year and a half. So it's been a while for Tend. Brink was about a year. Veiled Fate was definitely a year. Mythic Mischief was definitely a year or more, because Max was working on that on his own before. I would say Moonrollers was not a year. That was less than 6 months. We did that relatively quickly with Robert. Once again, Robert's fast, so that was a good. And then also we're coming out with a game that's in the Veiled Fate universe. It's a smaller game. So the smaller the game, the easier it is to iterate quickly. And that one we did in about 4 months, I think. So, but by the time it launches, it'll be closer to 6. So most games over a year. Some small games can be 6 months.
Cool.
Ooh, nice.
So I suppose we ought to talk about
Tend, yes.
See it in the background. I don't even have my game here. I sent mine to another preview, or someone was like, hey, my game didn't ever come. And I was like, oh no. So I shipped it to, it was some European country that's really, really far away. It was like $500 to ship it there.
Oh man.
Oh my gosh.
It's somewhere Eastern Europe. I can't remember now.
They're very lucky. We love our coffee, and
everyone who comes to the house for a games night, it's like, what are we playing today? Well, we're playing this. That's without a doubt. You don't get a choice.
And then you open the box. I will let you explain what it's about in a minute. But you open the box and you're like, and it's got pens, and it's got scratch cards, and it's got. Oh my god! It's amazing.
Yeah, it's like an Aladdin's cave in a box of just these amazing things. When I showed you the first time, I was like,
"What is this?
This is a roll and write." Boom! Giant box.
Like, so heavy. Can't be a roll and write.
And then I was like, oh, and there's this as well. This neoprene playmat, by the way, just to have that as well. Just like, but the one thing I'd say about Tend is the one thing I would say is these two things. That makes sense. One is I'm not a solo gamer. We're not solo gamers. However, I could sit on my own and play Tend.
Yeah.
I could just get like drawn in and just play Tend. The other thing is that there's a word that people use in board gaming that I really don't like. And that word is cozy. And what's really, really annoying is that Tend is the coziest goddamn game that I've ever played in my life. It's just...
It's so satisfying. It's so satisfying. You explain what it is, and then we can carry on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tend is a flip and write game. We also say it's a stamp and a scratch and a roll and write in addition to those things. Also maybe a tick and write. But basically you are a pioneer that's been hired by, we call it Space Amazon. It's named Zenith in the company, but it's basically Space Amazon to colonize this new planet that they've found and send goods from that planet back to them in space. And so you have a cargo pod and you're trying to farm and chop and mine and fish and find all these things and send it back to them in this cargo pod, which is a little polyomino game where you're trying to organize your goods in the way that gets you the most points. And so there's a lot of things in the game that Craig and Becky already mentioned, but like scratch off cards and stamping markers and things like that make it feel a little bit more than a flip and write. But at its heart, it's still a flip and write. But it is a very heavy game, more in the box weight than it is in the weight on BGG, I would say. But it's definitely not light on BGG either. I would say it takes our longest to teach, and it's the most intuitive once you know how to play.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, yeah.
The first time we played it, I think I was like, what do you do? And now you've got to go fishing, and then you've got to do this, and I'm not sure how it all goes together. The second time I was like, right, I know I've got to go here, I've got to do a bit of fishing, and I've got to chop, and I've got to get these resources. And then it's one of those games where you kind of want to play it a second time after you played it the first time, because you want to address all the things that you know you did wrong. I love it.
Exactly. I think like everyone I've ever spoken to has played it, and I had the same thing as well. It was like, oh, I got 24 points. This is what's happened. I got 34 points. Okay, and then suddenly I got 175 points. I'm now the master of all Tend.
Yep. The teaching game that we do at the office when people come, they're like, oh yeah, like what's a high score? Is 50 a high score? I'm like, yeah, you're like, that's great. And they're like, well, what'd you score? 184, but it's not a big deal. Like 50's great for your first game. And they're like, no, we're playing again. I wanna get over 100. But yeah. Go ahead.
Go on.
I was just gonna say, I think it's one of those games where you get 3/4 of the way through your first game and you're like, oh, I've seen all the mistakes I've made and I want to go back and start again so that I can fix all that stuff and optimize how I'm playing. I like those kind of games that make me think and try to figure out the best path.
I think the first time I played, I wanted to fix the bridge so I could go pond fishing or whatever it was. But I hadn't upgraded any of my sort of
fishing rods or
anything or my axe. And I quickly realised, no, I need to do that first before I go do something else. And the energy bars are really useful. And
they're so useful.
I just love the scratch element of the game.
Man, that was a scary thing to make because our manufacturer was like, you want to make what? And we're like, scratch off cards? They're like, for like lottery? Like it's like a lottery game? We're like, no, it's just like an exploration game. And they're like, I mean, it'll be expensive, but we think we can do it. And so we got the price back on them, and it was like the price of producing a small game just for that element. And we were like, hey guys, this isn't what we talked about when we were like, spitballing on how much this would cost. Like, this is like way more. And they're like, yeah, like just ended up being more complex. And so we're like the 3-4 months ago, we're panicking because it's just way too expensive for it to be viable for the game. And so we start shopping around all of China looking for these scratch-off cards. And thank God we found really great cards that look exactly like the ones you have for 1/4 of the price.
Oh, wow.
So it was like 10's going to cost $300. We can't sell it for $300.
Although I do get a bit nervous, so the more people who want to play it, so everybody who's been round to our house wants to play it, and that's fine. But I get a little bit nervous. I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to use too many of the scratch. Not for myself.
We have what you should do is make them use the app, and then you can keep scratching, because we have an app that we just finished developing that I'm really excited about. That I think I could show you. So basically, like, if you have a smartphone, you can open up this app, and if you want to go chopping, you can just click on the spaces. So it won't let me do it because I'm not chopping in the right place. And you can reveal it. And my favorite part is I'm a very distracted person, and so I'll navigate away to a different website. But if I come back, instead of being back to the beginning, it'll say, hey, save data has been found. Do you want to start from there, or do you want to do a new game? And I can start from there, which is wonderful. So I really like that. It is something that if you run out of scratch-off cards because you play the heck out of this game, because there's a lot in there. I think the final game, well, actually, that's not true. I don't want to reveal too much about the Kickstarter. Kickstarter will have a little bit more. The final retail game will have 100 of them, and then the Kickstarter versions will have more. But if you played 100 times, or had people play 100 times, and you wanted to keep playing, you can print off the other sheets at home. We provide those files, and then you can play with the app on your phone. Or make your guests play on the app, and then you can have enough scratch-off cards forever.
Yeah. Will you be able to buy the scratch-off cards separately on the website?
Yes.
And things? Yeah.
So all the sheets will have recharge packs, and then if you don't want to buy the recharge packs for the sheets, you can print those off, and then just buy the scratch-off cards if you want to. Yeah.
What I think is really clever with the sheets is that I thought I was playing the same game as Craig, and then he's like, no, I've got different things on mine. Yeah. And I'm like, that's really cool as well. Like, we're not actually playing the same thing, that our resources aren't worth the same amount, and you get a different experience each time.
I was tired of Zach looking over my shoulder so he'd know where to scratch to find the things he needed to find. So no, I'm just kidding. We have, your version has 5 different scratch off cards. The final version will have 30 different scratch off cards.
Wow!
So it's a lot more variety in. Actually, I take that back. It's 25. We settled on 25. And so those will all be shuffled up. So you and your neighbor most likely will not have the same cards. So you can't be like, I really need to find this wood. Where is it in yours? I'll try to go there. You can't do that. So yeah.
I like the fact that, as you're doing your chopping, the further you move down, and the mining as well, you're like unlocking other things.
Yeah.
And we've had friends who are like, I found a geode, and you're like, and then you get to do something cool, and it's just so satisfying.
Yeah. And I love cracking geodes in real life. And so cracking geodes in a board game, I was like, well, this is fun. Let's do something with this. And so Toby had already come up with a mechanic for it that's pretty similar to fishing, but it has its own little card, and it's super fun. The final card's a little bit different than yours. Yours is very structured, and it's in lines. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was fine. But if you roll a wild on one and not the other, you can only still get the same thing in 3 of the rows. And so now it's randomized. It's all shuffled together. So it doesn't look quite like your card does now. But I'm really, really excited about that mechanic. I think the thing, you've touched on the things that, when people come over to play it for the first time, that they're impressed by is usually the scratch-off card. The other thing is the markers. I really, really love the markers. Now, the markers is the main thing that's in the deluxe copies that's not in the retail copies. The retail copies have colored pencils in them. They don't have markers. So you'll have to draw the shapes in the color. Yeah. The markers have the stamping on one side and writing on the other side. And I love those markers. And we went through a bunch of different iterations on markers. And these are unbranded, but these are the first iterations. And these are what our manufacturer came up with. And so we got sent these, and we're like, oh, this might be great. It has a stamp thing here, and you take it off and you stamp them, whatever. Well, we realized that the inkwell for the stamp is in the cap, and the inkwell for the marker is in here. And we're like, the stamp is going to run out of ink in the first 10 plays. It just won't last. And so we started just scouring China again. China has gotten a lot of scouring from our studios looking for components for this game, either because of functionality or because of price. And we found the markers that you have, and I am blown away by those markers. Those markers, they're big, they have a giant inkwell, and they have great implements on both sides, and I love them. I'm really, really proud of those, and especially because I thought we were delivering these, and then we got to deliver the ones that you have. And so I'm a huge fan of those. But if you if you're unlike me and you can draw little shapes, the colored pencils will be fine. But if you're like me and little shapes all look the same when you draw them, the stamp markers are the way to go.
Yeah, I definitely. It's just, the scratch off thing, the stampers, and it just goes together to make like this most beautiful game. That's like this really clever puzzle. And I said to you the other day, I played a whole game just wanting to make a trellis because I hadn't done that yet.
Yeah.
I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is not the best way to win this game, but I just want to do this one thing in this.
Yeah, I was sitting there once in one game going, I want one of those giant pumpkin dice. I want a giant pumpkin dice. I'm working for that giant pumpkin dice.
Yep. Yeah, it is one of those ways of like imbalancing is still happening because it takes long to balance a game where you can do so many different things each playthrough. Like one playthrough, I won't even touch the animals. And then the next playthrough, that's my main strategy. And so making sure that at least the 4 main tasks of fishing, tending, which is like animals and crops, mining and chopping, can be pretty balanced on a way to path to victory. That's like the main thing we've been focused on for the last 3 months. Is like, how do we make that feel good every time and feel like you have a chance to win every time, no matter which way you're going. And that's been really fun, especially when someone in our Discord community just like finds like a broken strategy and they're scoring 300 points. And we're like, okay, that's awesome that you managed to do that, but we're going to nerf that because that is no way that me making my little space pineapples over here could catch 400 fish in a game. Like, that's not happening. So, and that's been really cool to have them break the game so that we can make the game great for everyone. And so, yeah.
I don't even think it matters who wins in that game.
No,
I'm not even bothered. I'm just like, we had fun playing.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. Damn it with the cozy. They've beaten me.
No, Craig, you had mentioned the Tend Companion app. Have you played with the Tend Companion app yet?
I've only looked, so we haven't actually played yet with it. But the other thing I really like about it is the seed game.
Yeah. That when Zach told me about that, so I don't know if you had a friend growing up that was just really good at everything, and like you just were like, wow, I don't understand that. Well, I after college went to go work for that friend because that friend was Zach, and so Zach just pulls things out of his hat. I'm like, how did you learn how to do this? Like, we didn't go to school. You went to school for music. Like, how are you coding this right now? And so it's really a pleasure working with him because he just is like, hey, I came up with this idea where like we could play the same game as anyone else at any time. And so it's like basically a time travel machine. You're just like, you type in Austin's game. Like I'll type in Austin's game. I'll play it solo and then I'll post it. And then other people in the company can play it, that same exact game that I played with a totally different strategy, and then see if they can beat the score that I did. And so we had people that were like, hey, like, we announced it, and they're like, the solo mode just looks like you're playing the same game. Can you make it, like, different? And we're like, well, I mean, that's a great solo mode. You're playing the same exact game as everyone else. Like, no, that's boring. I don't want to beat my own score. I want to do something interesting. And so, like, we're able to provide that where they can either post their score and other people can try to do that, or we can post our scores and put our scores, like, in the rule book as, like, challenges. Like, can you beat Austin on this seed? And his score of 200 or whatever. And I love that. But then I also love it's just like we were playing with 17 people in our office like a month ago. And I had 2 TVs and I just put the seeds on both the TVs and they were in different rooms playing the same game of 10. Wow. And it's just really amazing. And you were talking about playing solo, like this would be one of the games you'd be okay with playing solo. When you're doing that, you only need the 2 sheets and a scratch-off card and your neighbor cards. You can just put the other stuff on a TV or your computer screen or anything else, even your phone. It works on your phone. So it's just way less setup, and it's also less like card management. I'm not shuffling anything. I'm not having to manage any of that. So I love that companion app for what it is. And then also when we played, we had Dice Tower, and we had Carly from Board Game Buzz, and we had Bonzinator, and we had Jason, Easy Cat, and who else do we have? Jenna from Board Game Garden. We had them at the office, and we had one gameplay come out already, and another gameplay is coming out in the next week. And that game has its own seed. And so if you want to compare it to how they played at our office, you can play with that seed and compare your score. So I don't know. I'm just really geeking out about that. And I get to brag about it a little bit because I had nothing to do with creating it, even though I just got to enjoy Zach's brilliance.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really cool that you can play. Like, technically, you can have a friend in another country with that game and just be like, okay, we'll play together, like, but we'll play together over Zoom or something like that, but we've got this on our screen, so we're pulling from the same thing. So it's just such a cool idea. I think
it's also like really unique. Like,
yeah,
there's nothing out there on the market that's like it.
No,
it's
that's great to hear.
No, I think it's one of those ones. I think a lot of people have seen it advertised and stuff, and I've been asked loads about it, and people do think like it's everything. It's but because some games have too many mechanics. Like they'll have. I think like Endless Winter. I enjoy that game. It's a fun game, but it is a deck building area majority. It's got every single mechanic. It sprawls across the table, and it's like, okay, there's a lot here. And I think people see it thinking, that's a lot. That's almost too much for a roll and write.
I think sometimes in a game, too many mechanics, and it doesn't quite flow together. Like it doesn't, it's just like, well, you've put that in because you just wanted an extra mechanic. Whereas with Tend, it feels like, no,
it makes sense.
It does make sense. You might want to be, finding animals, or you might want to be fishing. You might want, like, the whole world. It is like I would describe it like a little world.
Yeah.
That you're exploring basically, all the different components work together.
Yeah, it's got a real like Stardew Valley Minecraft-y kind of feel about it.
Yeah. I'd credit Toby with that. So this is Toby's brainchild, and he brought it to us, and we've co-designed it together. So we all are all co-designers on it. But Toby, unlike us, started with a theme. We normally start with mechanics, like I said. So Toby started with the theme. He knew what the theme was the whole time. And because of that, I think that's why the mechanics mesh so well together, because it was always theme first over mechanic. And so it wasn't like, okay, I like these two mechanics, let's figure out a theme that puts them together. It was, here's the theme, what mechanics fit together in this. And so it's a little bit different of like an approach for it. And Toby did a really good job of just making each action feel different from them. Like fishing doesn't feel at all like chopping. And it's just this very different approach to than we normally take. I know there's lots of game designers out there that approach it the same way as Toby, but it was great working with Toby and getting to experience that side of it. So yeah, we had a blast making this one. And you're right, Stardew Valley is a huge inspiration in the game. There's a few others, but Stardew Valley is definitely the main one.
Yeah, I think because we've some of our friends have played it. They were with us. They've very much enjoyed that kind of those video games and that kind of thing, and that kind of spoke to them in that way when they were playing it. So they really got like drawn in because of all that.
Do you think that it will bring in a whole new clientele to the Ivy Studio games, because it's quite different from Moonmakers and Fractured Sky and things like that?
Yeah, very different. And I think our job now is convincing people that it's different, and like also just like reaching those people and being like, hey, like this, if you think you know who we are, this is also us. And we've done an okay job of that, just because none of our games have been like same mechanics. Like Moonrakers and Veiled Fate and Fractured Sky and Brink, like they're all very different from each other. And so we don't want to be known as like they're the deck building company or they're the area control company. We want to be pretty agnostic when it comes to mechanics, and I think this is just the furthest we've gotten from our other games, and so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, but it's still beautifully produced, just like all the other games.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
Yeah. So when the Kickstarter is the 29th of October.
Yeah, that's 5 days away. I'm realizing right now. So yes, that is. It's coming up very fast.
Cool. Do you have Are you able to say any price points or anything like that for it at the moment, or is that more of a best kept secret?
No, I can say some of it. So normally our prices are pretty close to what they are going to be at our version of retail not being Target and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the reason you back our campaigns is there's a ton of extra stuff on the campaign that's usually cosmetic or just more. In this case, it'll just be more. I can't share too much about it, but like there'll just be more in the box than what will be at retail. And then we tend to try to keep we tend to try to keep an approachable price point. For us, that normally means under $70 for the base game. And so I know that's not as cheap as some people would want it, especially for Flip and Right. But for us, $70 is quite good. So we'll be under $70 for the base game. And then the version that has the markers in it will probably be in that like 100 to 110 range. And then we'll usually have a super deluxe that's just all the bells and whistles all kind of thrown in together. Generally, our super deluxes are over 150. I do not think this one is. I think it's well under 150. So as far as IV games go, I would say that this is in the middle to the low end of the price. But there's also not a ton of miniatures and like a ton of painted things in it. So that makes sense.
But then people can choose, can't they, whether they have the pencil version or the markers version. You know, there's options for everybody.
Yeah. Every version has the scratch-off card.
Markers, but...
Yeah, every version has a scratch-off card, so it's the same game. It's just the cargo manifest, you're either stamping or you're drawing a shape with the color. And so that's the only real difference. But markers are expensive, but they're also incredible. Like we were at no point were we playing without the markers. We knew we wanted the markers the whole time. So yeah, for sure.
So our version has silver coins, but are they going to be gold? I think.
Yeah, so this is not the right coin, but there's going to be two versions on the Kickstarter campaign. One will be a gold coin that doesn't have a wash. So this coin has a wash where it's darker, and then there will be a coin that has a wash as well. So the Moonrakers coins have a wash. So if you look at the, I don't have any of those right here either, but Moonrakers, the 3 coin is pretty close to what the upgraded version of the coin intend will be. The basic game will be that 3 coin without any black wash on it. So there'll be 2 different versions.
No.
Very cool. Very cool.
A nice little touch.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what else is different between our versions. Y'all don't have any like marker storage. There'll be marker boxes in the final one because your markers are probably just thrown in there.
Yeah, it's a cardboard insert. It's functional, but everything's just like in there. It has its space.
That cardboard insert was made for these, so it really just got thrown in there at the last minute. And so there will be a new cardboard insert in the final one.
Nice.
But that was funny when Panda was like, "Hey, your markers are like an inch longer than ours." And I was like, "Try to figure it out. I don't know what to tell you."
Where does the neoprene mat come separate, or is it in the box?
It's in the box in the second and third tiers. So the first tier's base, deluxe and super deluxe, it is in the box. And that's another reason so the markers took up the space that the mat was supposed to have. So yes, the mat shipped outside the box in your version, but in the actual version it'll ship inside the box.
I mean, the mat's so helpful for, just
I love the mats.
Yeah. So did you say the retail version, like the standard retail version, does that have a board or that has a mat as well? No mat.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, you just put it on,
literally
just put it on the table.
Okay. Put it on the table.
That makes sense.
And we'll have the mat on our website for people. We'll have the recharge packs on our website for people. We'll have the markers on our website for people if they want to come back and get more markers. Or different, like if they started with the pencils and their friend bought the markers and they play with the markers, I need the markers. They can come back and buy them from us. That'll be fine. I'll be happy.
Cool. Yeah, I think
everybody needs to go back it.
Yep, absolutely. Everyone needs to go make sure they're following and definitely that. Make sure you're getting notifications on for that launch in 5 days as of recording.
5 days. When does this launch? When does this podcast launch?
I'll probably post it in about 5 minutes after once we finish chatting, so it'll be out this evening.
I have to hedge what I say then. There's an activity on the Kickstarter, so we like to do like little games and little things. So on Brink, it was like a murder mystery that you got to play along with. As 10, you'd expect it's a lot different than that. There's no murder mystery on the 10 world, but there is a community event, and how well the backers do in that community event will determine how many cards are in our community packs. So we make community packs with almost all of our games, where basically the community is creating cards that we're approving, and then people vote on which cards are going to be in the pack. The number of those cards is determined by how well they do in this community event, which will start on the 29th. And I'm really excited. I can't tell you about it, but it's another one of those things where Zach kind of just outdid himself, and it's another little video game experience that goes along with the game. So,
brilliant.
That sounds really cool. Cool.
Definitely. So is there, away from 10, is there anything else in the pipelines in Ivy Studios?
Yeah, so we went from launching 1 game a year to 4 games a year.
Wow.
And so there's always something in the pipeline. We are starting to slow down. We'll go back down to 3 games, probably 3 Kickstarters and a direct launch a year. And so the next 2 games are already in the pipeline. The first one is almost done, and the second one is, I would say it's like halfway there on mechanics. It was like 80% of the way there. The problem with board game design is you make a decision that's the right decision, but it takes you 2 steps babackwards a lot of times. And so that one was like, yeah, this is done. Okay, no, we're back at 60%. We're not looking at it. So
are they still spacey themed or
no? One is back in the Veiled Fate universe, but it's a 2-player experience. And then one is right now political, but it will not be political at all. It is more just like you're trying to control this country. It's more medieval than it is modern politics. And the way it's like voting in power shifts and stuff like that. You're trying to manipulate the power shifts. And then after that, we have who knows what, something else.
Very exciting, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Okay.
I think it's like watch this space because it feels like they're like, yeah, you just need to keep up with what's going on because it feels like anything could be produced. Yeah. It feels like you don't sort of limit yourself by, cost or whatever. It's like we want to make the best game we possibly can, and we're going to bring you the best game we can.
Hey, that's exactly what we're going for. Internally, I get told no all the time, and I hate it. I have a dice tower sitting over there for Moonrakers that never got made, and it's my biggest failure. It was so cool. I'm going to get it. I love showing this. So this is our manufacturing molded model that it was supposed to be like a gray, like painted thing. Yeah. You put the dice in up here, and they come out onto this tray here. And the manufacturing cost was so astronomical that we never launched it. Still my biggest regret. It was just like it was going to cost like $80 for a dice tower, and everyone was like, "I don't think anyone's going to buy a dice tower for Moonrakers," and also an $80 dice tower for Moonrakers. So this is the thing that I will make happen somehow.
I don't know. Like Luthier had from Paverson. £80. No, it wasn't. But had the big. A big wooden piano which made music, a big organ that made musical noises when you rolled it through. So
you asked me my most beautiful games. Luthier will be up there when it delivers. So I love Patterson games. They do great stuff.
Yeah, stunning games. Okay, do you have any more questions? No?
I don't think so. No, I'm just very excited for Tim.
Okay, well, at this point, we're going to ask you for your board game menu. So we often ask our guests to come in with an ideal menu, a starter, a main course, and a dessert in a board game. What would your ideal board game day be?
So I love bringing people that have never played a real board game into the fold of board games and get them excited. Be like, I didn't know board games could be this fun, right? Because I go to the doctor's office and they say, what do you do for a living? And I say, I make board games. And they're like Monopoly. And then we talk about that for a half hour. I'm like, I just want you to tell me if I have strep throat or not. Like, don't want to talk about this right now. And so when I get a new friend or my family member to like go play games, I want to start off with something really, really light. That's like, that was really fun. Show me more. And the game that I've been doing that lately with is called Trio. You played Trio?
I've seen it. Yeah.
The better version, it's a Japanese game called Nana, and it's much cuter in my opinion, but an American, I don't even remember what company made it, but they rebranded it to be Day of the Dead, like deal. I might have it right here. I do. So Trio is the same as that game as Nana. It's just I don't like the art quite as much, but it's fantastic. It's basically Go Fish if Go Fish was incredible, because Go Fish is not. And so it's just a really, really light game that's incredible. So that would be my appetizer course to wet the palate and be like, oh, games are fun. And then I'd go something a little heavier when I'm teaching someone new or just like playing a game with people that aren't as heavy of gamers as I am. I usually go for Knizia. So my go-tos would be Medici or Ra or I said Quest for El Dorado, Medici, and Ra are my 3 that I would choose between depending on how I was feeling. I generally go Quest because Quest is like the entry deck builder for me, and I love deck building. So it's like a great way to teach them the mechanic of deck building in a way that's understandable because it's a race. It's very clear what you're trying to do. And so I love that. And then the dessert course, what was the dessert course supposed to be? Is that like a nice way to end out a long night?
Whatever you want. Yeah, it could be a nice light fight, or it could be a full-on game of Blood on the Clock Tower. Who knows?
All right. Well, okay. So I'm gonna finish this off with what I was originally thinking, and then we're gonna go into some of my like a real quick tangent. And be like, okay, if I was actually going to dinner for myself, this is what I'd be. I'm gonna go back to Splitto. I'm going back to Splitto for the dessert. Splitto is just this incredible. You talk a lot while you're playing it. You can have full-on conversations. It's a nice way to end the evening without heavy rules teach. It's like a 3-minute rules teach, so it doesn't take long to teach, which is lovely. If I was going out for like Brazilian steakhouse, like dinner for myself, it would be the 3 games, Twilight Imperium, and then it would be Blood on the Clock Tower, and then it would be Sidereal Confluence. Those are like my top 3. Me, like I'm going somewhere for a day and I'm playing. So very different than the very light fare that I was offering before, as far as games go.
There's a dinner for everyone.
Yeah.
I've come to that dinner.
Yeah, I'll definitely. I'll be there. Right. Yeah. When we get on a plane, we'll see you. Put the kettle on. We'll see you.
My house. 10 launch.
No problem. Cool. Do you? Do you have anything else that you want to say, or?
No, I think if you've never played an IV game or you want to learn about us, there's lots of gameplay on the internet of our games, and it's also they're all on Tabletop Simulator. If you use Tabletop Simulator for free, and the mods are usually pretty well made and like programmed, so you don't have to do too much of the work. And yeah, we would love to hang out with you at a con, or y'all, Craig and Becky, and then anyone else that wants to come hang out and play some games and get to know you. So. We'll be at UKGE this year, so I don't know if you all go to that, but
definitely be there.
Definitely go.
Definitely be there for that one as well. And where can people find you if they want to follow you? Obviously on Instagram and socials.
Yeah, Instagram and all those places. We either are Ivy Studio or Ivy Games. I know that's confusing. The reason is because Ivy Studio was the animation studio, and then when we made our second tier, it had to be Ivy Games. And so YouTube were Ivy Games. Most other places were Ivy Studio at this point. And yeah. That's where you can find us. We're also going to be on Kickstarter, like everyone we've been talking about, on the 29th. And that's just if you search 10 Kickstarter, you will for sure find it. So
cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And it's been really good to have a chat. And thank you all for listening. One last thing I will add, young listeners, before you think I've forgotten, I have not forgotten that this podcast is sponsored by Rent, Shuffle and Roll. RentShuffleandRoll.co.uk is a proud sponsor, I hope they're proud of us, of Get Into Games on Air. Use the code GITG50 to get 50% off your first month board game rental with Rent, Shuffle and Roll. They may have some Ivy Studio games, they may not. I don't know the answer to that question.
You need to, so they send you, don't they?
Oh, yeah. If you do, tell them they need to have Ivy Studio games, and then you can rent them, try before you buy, then you can buy them. Yeah. Direct from Ivy Studios. Yeah. Thanks for listening to that advertisement campaign. Yes, thanks for listening to us. And again, thank you to Austin for joining us on this episode. And remember to... Backtend on the 29th. Get into Tend.
No, don't get into Ivy Studios.
That's breaking in entry. That's a terrible idea. Please remember to get into game.